Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. I am a steadfast anchor, living in purpose and on purpose wherever my feet are. Dr. Suzanne Vester, our guest today, very important guest in the Culture Matters podcast, someone very important, deeply close to our show here and our family behind the scenes. They're a coach, they're a mentor, they're a doctor of naturopathy, biblical naturopathy, a fitness connoisseur, an avid student, someone that I learn from every time we get together, the host of Faith, Family, and Fulfillment, author of the same name, Faith, Family, and Fulfillment, of course, Chris Vester's lovely wife, Dr. Suzanne Vester. Thanks for coming on the Culture Matters podcast. I was so nervous trying to memorize that quote. I hope I got it right.
You got it super close. You got it super close. Thank you for having
Ah,
me.
what did I miss? We got to start there because in the spirit
Yeah.
of the coach to the mentor to the mentee, the doctor
Yeah.
to the patient, what's the piece?
So I'm a steadfast anchor. I'm living in purpose and on purpose, serving wherever my feet are.
Serving.
So
So
close.
beautiful. No, beautiful. So service, has that always been something that from earliest memory you could say that it was spoke to you on a personal level because your life, I didn't say even doula, right? That's all that we can get into that, what a
Yeah.
doula is even for the audience to know. So has service always been deeply important to you and your and who you are as a person?
So I think that helping, um, maybe not so much serving, has been a very big part of my life since very early years. My mom is an educator, so she was in service to her students, the parents, the community all the time. So it's something I saw a lot of.
What did she teach?
She started out in third grade. She taught in third for a year, second for a year, first in a year, and then she was in kindergarten for like 21 years. I think it was some crazy number of years. I don't like
Wow, that's
5-year-olds that
fascinating.
much. So, I mean, hats off to her.
So third set all the way down to kindergarten. What
Yeah.
what could have been about kindergarten and not preschool or first?
Yeah. So in kindergarten, some basic life skills already. So you're not doing all the stuff. And I think that that was just a really good place to kind of catch them when they were just fresh,
Hmm.
get good habits started as soon as they walked in the door, rather than catching them a few years after the fact and maybe not having such good habits ingrained
Hmm.
already.
When it comes to helping, what would you say are some core values that you've lived by to help your clients? Whether today it's when we'll get into the range of clients that you have, but even earlier in your fitness career, you competed in the fitness competitions. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So helping looks a lot of different ways, but I think at the very core, helping just means being very aware of your surroundings. You have to be eyes wide open and very intuitive a lot of times to the things being said, the things not being said, and just looking for opportunities to just step in, not overstep, but just step in and provide a benefit or a service or a kind word, whatever it is, and just make that a habit. Once you make it a habit, you see opportunities everywhere.
Now that when it came to the physical side of wellness, how much has that, would you say, added value to your more holistic, because holistic approach to medicine today and to I get self-improvement today? What's the connection that you see there that has given you an edge to help people?
When it comes to the physical fitness space,
Mhm.
I was able to witness firsthand the really bad way of doing things. People ultimately chasing their best self, destroying their self. And in seeing that firsthand, it was a great opportunity to see how to do things much differently, to see things from a whole body angle, When you're competing, it's really easy to get hung up in the day of, because that's what you're shooting for. Everything that you do in the weeks prior is leading up to the day of competition, when you want to show up a certain way, you want to look a certain way, down to your tan, your suit, your hair, your makeup, like all of the things. But getting you to that with that singular focus oftentimes negates a lot of the other areas in your life that you need to be paying attention to. And so helping people to realize that you can still do that, but you can do it in a much healthier way all around, so that you're not burning down relationships, not burning down your body in the process of seeking that one day of showing up on stage for a lot of people for just some hardware, just a trophy. Like, amateurs
Mm,
don't get paid, so they're just kind of showing up for themselves in a lot of ways. And it's a very selfish sport by nature. So you you do isolate a lot when you're prepping, just because nobody really wants to go do stairs with you for 2 hours or more a day. They don't really necessarily want to eat the same thing you're eating, so it's very isolating. And I think that just from a holistic standpoint, there's just a way better opportunity to do it differently, so that when you're finished, when you decide you don't want to do that anymore, you haven't burned your life down in the process.
the contrast is really powerful to me for our listeners, is that so deeply successful and ingrained in that culture. And today, in a part of, let's just say, Gen Pop or general population,
Mhm.
how much perspective or experience has that given you to your clients today that it's hard to quantify even because you have the education, the book knowledge, the textbooks, and you have that real life lived experience. It's I want to kind of grab a hold of that so people can understand.
I think it goes back to looking at the people. When people come to see me, they come to see me for usually like one thing. Like, they'll say, I'm coming in for, and then you fill in the blank. And what I've tried to get people to see is it's never about the one thing. Everything is about everything. So that just might be the place where the wheels have completely fallen off and you're in the ditch, but that doesn't mean that that's the only area that requires work, or the only area that requires focus and time, attention, resources. And I think when you can get people to look at it from the standpoint of, if you move this thing that you're not thinking is very important, if you move it incrementally to a better place, then that is going to elevate the other things in your life to a better place, whether that's weight loss, stress management, medication management, disease, like whatever it is. Foundationally, for example, if you don't sleep well, then I can give you all the supplements, all the exercise, all the good foods, all the things. But if you're not sleeping well, you're still going to feel like trash. And I think it's hard for people sometimes to get out of like that one thing focused mindset, to look at the broader range of things in their life that could be having an impact on where they are, not just in health, but in every space.
So people come in for one thing, and it's your role to to figure out what else is going on
Yes,
that maybe they're not
absolutely.
even aware of.
Yes. Part doctor, part detective.
What was the inspiration behind the well? The well has such
Yeah.
seems like a very powerful metaphor. This you
Yeah.
founded the well a handful of years ago. You've been in the helping profession for decades,
Mhm.
but what was the inspiration behind the well?
So we are in a culture of very broken people. And they're not just broken because of their health, they're broken mentally, emotionally, spiritually. There's just so many inputs coming in every day for people, that I really was wanting to have a space where people could just come in. They could feel an immediate sense of being comfortable and home and safe, and just unburdening themselves in all of those spaces. Having had a for profit practice for many, many years, the drive to switch it over into the well as a nonprofit functioning entity is that natural natural resources, natural medicine, the natural space just in general is, it is kind of talked down by the popular masses, like big pharma and traditional major medical, and it's not covered by insurance. So that was a definite barrier to entry for a lot of people who really wanted to do it differently, who wanted to do it holistically in a complete way, serving their whole body, but they just didn't have the ability to jump into that space because it can be quite costly. So, in founding the well and opening up the door differently, so people can come in and there's a service that would fit just about anyone. So if you want to see me individually, but that's really outside of your resources this space at this time, then I can plug you into something else that we offer at a no cost or low cost option, which still gives you the benefit, helps you kind of start moving forward. And who knows what the ripple of that could be long term if you just make some mindset shifts or you make some lifestyle changes. So the rationale behind it was how can how can we serve more people in a broader range of ways so that we're not just serving an individual, we might be serving a family or an entire community in a way that could have generational impact, not just the person coming in at that day for whatever reason that they're coming in, but how is that going to then in fact impact their lifestyle at home? How's that going to impact their family, their children, their spouse? How is that going to impact them at work? How is that going to open up their eyes to more opportunities? Just so many things. And the well, historically, if you look back into the Bible, it was a place where people gathered. They were like community. They worked out problems. They really had their village mindset there. So if you had things to trade, you came and you did it at this common place. So in in the biblical societies, that was kind of where everything happened. It was like the hub, if you will, because everybody needed water, and people would come and they would gather, they would talk, they would do life together. So ultimately, that's kind of the goal, is to build a community of people who are like mindseted and who want to do things outside of the traditional box, but together.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I want to ask about, because background in psychology, you worked with at the Columbia program, the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, met all these amazing thinkers and learned from them, and then followed, right, biblical naturopathy. You're a doctor in that work. What are the conversations like in those rooms, in those actual, those are big brand institutions? What are the conversations like? Because I want to go, if we talk about the whole system, you know, what I got from that was people that have more affluence they can do things holistically. Those with less have less of an option. So, and I
Mhm.
do, yeah. So, what were the conversations like in those institutions, being a student to become the teacher?
So the conversations were amazing. Honestly, they were incredibly eye-opening to to different ways of thinking that maybe I hadn't thought about before. I learned very quickly that there are things that do not align with me and how I believe and how I think and how I live. And while I can certainly acknowledge them, I don't necessarily have to jump in and practice with them. But the conversations were much around like, how do we make a shift in our communities so that that barrier to entry is not like it potentially has been. I know individuals who have the option of spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on their health. They can do all of the new things, the trendy things, the things that have been rooted for, decades and decades. They can do all of those things and it doesn't really impact any other area of their life in a negative way. They don't have to go, oh gosh, am I going to be able to, you know, eat breakfast and dinner every night this week? Or is it a lunch only week because I need to go and
Mm,
do this other thing? And I don't really want to do it the traditional way. So the conversations were like, how do we not really fix the system? Because the system is, its roots are very, very deep. So I don't know that we can quote fix the system, but how can we introduce a new way of thinking and a new way of practicing that opens the door to more people? Um, and I
mm,
think as I have learned more, I have realized looking in the rear view that when I was working in mental health, it was It was much like being an attorney. It was all about the billable hours for the day. It was never about, well, let me rephrase that. It was um, very often not about the overall health and outcome for the patient. It was more about, did you meet enough hours, billable hours today to cover the expense of having you here kind of situation? And flawed as it was even 25 years ago, it's much more flawed now. And we have a much greater need now than we had then when it comes to mental health, physical health, longevity medicine, and those kinds of things. I hope
When
that
you
answered
say
what you were looking
bibl
for.
yeah, the biblical, the billable hours, you were actually in the hospital system or in a more of a traditional
I was,
institution, and
yeah,
that was not something that you cared about the patient, wanted to
yeah,
pursue. Hey, how do we actually get results for people?
yes,
And that conversation translated to when you did your schooling
yes.
for
So,
your medicine.
yeah, absolutely. Because I only lasted in that space for about 18 months before I was like, you know what, there are so many other things to consider here other than I'm going to see you once a week for 45 minutes and then I'm going to send you back out into the world with no real tools to change anything. And I started noticing then, and I had been in the health space through college. That's how I got extra spending money and that sort of thing. So I wasn't completely blind to it or ignorant to it. But I was like, what if we shifted and, for example, I worked with a lot of children that were in group homes. Group homes by default do things that are easy because it's kind of chaotic. So when mealtime comes around, it's more easy and cost effective than it is about foundational nutrition. And I was thinking one day, I was like, what if we gave these kids better food? Like just very simply, like what if we served them things that were fresh, less processed, less refined, certainly less sugar? What if we did that over time? What kind of impact would that have? So that kind of got me into the, you know, foundationally, what do our bodies need on a day-to-day basis to even be functional, not optimal, but just functioning well enough to get through every day without breaking, which led
Mm,
me into the integrative nutrition space, which then, as I was digging through that, I was like, wow, there's so many things out here. There are, herbs, natural remedies, tinctures, all of these different things that are naturally occurring. Why are we trying to create them in labs and then sell them in big box stores for like ridiculous profit margins, but they're not really serving a purpose? Our bodies don't really know what to do with them. So how do we manage that? Which kind of led to like getting the doctorate in biblical naturopathy is okay. So I, as a believer, feel that the Bible is kind of the final say in everything. And as I was studying through, I was like, it tells you very clearly, like, do this to not die, eat this to
mm,
not die, and it's very, very specific. And if you get down to the root of that, it's all of the things that I have been talking about for 20 plus years. Eat your fruits, eat your vegetables, eat your proteins, stay away from highly refined processed garbage foods, all of those kinds of things. But because we are a society that has been so overly conditioned to go fast, easy, quick, we often over um, we overcomplicate the simple thing of eating basic foods. And once we get into the eating basic foods and we give our bodies the things that it inherently needs, then we see things start to shift. We see things start to change. Now, it's not fast. It's not like taking something for a headache and then 2 hours later you're back and you're good. It's a slower process. It's a much slower walk. But you didn't end up where you are today by doing what you did yesterday. So you're not going to reverse that in a day either. And it's just really miraculous to see people being more thoughtful about what they're consuming, both through their food, through their devices, through what they're reading, what they're watching, who they're talking to, watching them level up in that area or those areas, and then the ripple effect that it has in all other areas of their life. Their minds become clear. They're less depressed. They're less anxious. They're more able to sleep and function and do the things that they wanted to do in the first place, but just simply couldn't because they just weren't, they were just functioning. Like they were just getting by. They were not thriving in any way, shape, or form.
Mm. Do you think the people's, or what are your thoughts on the relationship that people have with their food can tell you the relationship they have with themselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So many people come in and they'll say, I'm an emotional eater. Okay, well, what gets you upset enough that you go and you feel like you overdo? Let's talk about that thing. Okay, where'd that come from? How do you make a small shift in that so that the end result isn't going and doing something that you feel gross about later and that you wish you hadn't do? So you have that shame and that guilt. Like, how do we dismantle those things at the very beginning? Like, what is the trigger that gets you there? Let's go back to that. So maybe you don't need to just focus on weight loss. Maybe we need to focus on what triggers you in the first place to make you do behaviors that you then regret and feel shameful over.
When you mention the group home, the children, I'm thinking about the young man or woman who maybe has gained weight and now people, in the schoolyard, they
Mm-hmm.
have something to say. And that what relationship could that weight gain have with what they're eating is on the table or not on the table? Am I
Mm,
starting to get a picture of like the impact that you make on not just the parents, but the kids and the
mm,
relationship that if you can kind of elaborate on that. That was a picture that came. I haven't.
yeah. So when you start having people pay attention to what they eat, they start paying attention to like that alone a lot of times. Like they don't see the potential outcome in other areas until you can look back with them over a period of days and weeks and say, okay, well, how has this shifted? How has this improved? What does this look like now? I have a lot of parents who come in because they have children who they struggle to manage. That's the best word I can say. They've been diagnosed with maybe ADHD, or they have a learning difference, or different things like that, and they're just really struggling to, how can I best help my kid? And my answer to them a lot of times is, tell me what's in your pantry. We'll start there. It's not behavioral necessarily. It's not that we're going to reinvent the wheel. Like, let's just pull away things that could be creating more of a problem. And then let's peel those back one by one so that we can then look at what the actual problem is. Because you don't know if the kid just is like hyped up on sugar and caffeine and dies, or if they really do
Yep.
need like major behavior modification. Like, how do we know the difference? Well, we don't initially. We have to dive into that, and we have to look at that. Now, what is that going to do for that family long term? Well, if parents are less exhausted and frustrated over how to manage the day-to-day life in their house, then they're going to be communicating better. Then they're also going to be able to like reflect on like how can I like level up again. So let's say they shift the food and that really makes everything in their household run much smoother. They're less frustrated, they're sleeping better, they're having better communication. Where does that lead to next? I don't know. Maybe they go out for a walk every night after dinner. There's just a lot of different things that you have to dial it back to the basics before you can start getting like too complicated, which I think we do often. I think we try to make things way too complicated. I'm going to take 25 supplements and I'm going to work out for 2 hours a day and I'm only going to eat clean protein. Awesome. Like, just pick one of those things, get really
Mm.
good at it, and then maybe move on to the next thing. It's the same thing with family dynamics. Like, pick one thing to work on, get really good at it, and then pick the next thing. Because if you don't do it that way, if you don't do it slowly, you end up getting frustrated over and over again because you feel like you're failing when actually you're just putting too many expectations on yourself to actually be successful.
Wow. Uh, Um, what is your take on having a plan?
Oh, you need one. Everybody needs a plan. It doesn't need to be so rigid that it creates more stress if it's not followed to the letter. It needs to have flexibility. And when I look at plans and I look at how to help people plan, ahead for the day, the week, the month, I'm like, okay, we're going to start here. Awesome. Okay, where are we going? Where's the first point we're going to? Okay, great. What are we going to do to get there? All right. And they go, okay, well, what's next? I don't know. We got to get there first. So we get to that next point. Okay, we reassess. Do we still need to go in the same direction we were going? Do we need to shift course? Do we need to bring in somebody who knows a little bit more than we do? Like, what does that next point look like? But kind of know where you want to go, but be really flexible in how you get there. Because it's not going to be linear. It's not going to be point A to point B to C to D and on down the line until you get there. It's going to be like A to L, back to, maybe down to Z, back to Q, then up to F. It's going to just be all over the place. But having a plan that is so rigid and so structured that if you deviate from it at all, that creates a lot more life stress, or you're not really serving yourself. So keep your plan flexible so that way you can bend and shift when you need to. But if you go into something without any kind of plan, like you have no idea where you're going, you have no idea where you want to end up, then you're just going to wander forever, and you're going to, you're not going to be able to figure out like why things haven't worked out for you, because you're going to feel like you've done all the things, but you've simply been busy. You've not really been productive.
Mm. What have you found helps patients take things off their plate, whether that be a thought experiment or exercises or just like a type of dialogue or
I usually ask them, if that were to leave today, how would your life change? If whatever it is that they are saying that they want to get rid of or they want to do. Okay, so let's say that you want to, like, that you're really attached to that, but you feel like it's causing you problems. If it were no longer in your life as of right now, how would your life be different tomorrow? And if it's not a negative, then it's going to be a positive, and it's probably a good idea to let it go. I think that we're too conditioned to say yes to too many things that we're not suited for, that we're not made to do, that we're not even really good at, to keep the peace or to garner some kind of favor with somebody or whatever it is. And we're not really good at protecting our yes. Because if you say yes to everything, then you're not going to be really good at anything. But if you learn to say no to those things that you're not really suited for, then they will naturally fall off your plate. And a lot of times you'll be able to point to someone else who's much better at it than you are, who can do it 10 times faster. And you don't have the stress of trying to do something that just isn't yours to do a lot of times.
you've interviewed. So we have faith, family, and fulfillment.
Yes.
Amazing show. You have conversations with your husband, Chris, on various topics. You interview couples in all different contexts of life and business. What would you say are some themes that have come through that show from all of the interface with these couples of all varying degrees of success in each aspect of life? Some themes that you say have been have come up or you have observed
Mm.
that be very helpful for our listeners to hold on
Yeah.
to think through.
I think that the one thing I can say kind of like maybe across the board that has come up is you need to listen far more than you speak. And that has come up in a lot of different contexts, but the concept I think has been kind of across the board. If you're listening far more than you're speaking, then you're going to actually be listening to understand, not just to reply. And when you can listen to someone to understand where they are, where they're coming from, why they have the point of view that they have, then the opportunity for conflict to be an ongoing contentious thing is far less, because you're beginning to really know the person that you're speaking to and that you're listening to, rather than just trying to win the argument or get your way or formulate your next response and answer. You're actually really hearing what they're saying, dissecting it, asking really good questions back, so that you don't have to repeat the same conversations over and over and over again, or learn the same lesson, um, on repeat. But I think if I were to say one thing, that would probably be it. Listen far more than you speak.
Mm. For your most successful patients,
Mm-hmm.
how would you say what's the fruit of that in their life
Mm.
as it relates to their health, their well-being?
I like to laugh and say sometimes people come into the office at Mach 10 with their hair on fire because that's a reflection of how their life is right now. It's just all over the place. Um, I call it herding cats because if you ever tried to do that, you know that it's impossible. But I think that the common things that I see and what happens is they're actually able to sit and be still and quiet with themselves and be okay with that. Because a lot of times if you have lots of things going on in your life and you're feeling very out of control or things are very chaotic, the thought of sitting in quiet stillness with yourself, you just can't do it. It's unnerving. Your nervous system is not prepared to do that. But as people start to peel back the layers of what's going on in their life, what's working well, what's not working well, making the shifts that they need to make, they become much more confident and comfortable in just simply being who they are, not trying to put on a performance for anybody in their family, at their job, in their community. They're just good at saying, this is who I am. I'm okay with who I am. And I'm going to make myself the best version of who I am versus trying to figure out how to please every single person that comes in and interacts with them, which is creating a lot of the stress and the disquiet and discomfort and noise that they're feeling in a lot of different spaces. Um, we try to not oversimplify the problem, but sometimes the answer to the problem is incredibly simple. There's a lot that can go into getting there. But at the root of it, when you think about it, if you can just get quiet and get still and be comfortable with that, you're going to be able to shed a lot of the things that are creating chaos and craziness around you. So when people are the most successful is they understand that it's okay to not be doing all the time. They understand that rest is a critical component of wellness. They understand that if the path that they're on right now ends up taking them in a completely different direction, that's okay too. The goal is to to walk around in your skin every day and be okay with the person in it. Not necessarily to find perfection or to find perfect health or harmony, work-life balance, any of those things. Sometimes it's just simply being comfortable being in your skin and just being who you are.
Hmm. Biblical naturopathy.
Mhm.
Rules lead to order, leads to clarity, and you know what the ingredients are because you've studied. Am I starting to get a grasp of the value, the work that you do with our listeners? There's rule like there's teaching that have transcendent rules that create order, and that leads to clarity. It's not to be overcomplicated. Here
Right.
it is.
Yes.
And these are the ingredients. The big institutions might package them up and then sell them in this way or that way. But hey, you have access to this. Here
Yes.
we are. Am I starting to, or what am I missing? Or how would you elaborate on that?
Now I think you nailed it pretty good because if you go in the order that you just listed, then you're going to eventually come to a resolution that is it might look different than what you originally had thought it would look like, but that doesn't mean you're less satisfied with it. It just means it doesn't look like you thought it was going to look. Um, our middle daughter, it was so funny when she was learning how to ride a skateboard. She came in the house and she was really small. She was like 6. She came in the house and she said, that was harder than it looked. Because, she had in her head a certain way that riding the skateboard was going to look, and it didn't go that way. And I think a lot of times when we're looking at ourselves and we're trying to get better, feel better, manage our lives better, whatever it is, I think we have a picture in mind of what that should look like, but it might be harder than it looks to get to that quote ideal. But that ideal that you have in your mind, you have to have some flexibility with that as well. Because if in
Mm,
my life, if I were to look at my ideal as that one day on stage that we talked about earlier, that is that is not sustainable over time. And I would be a miserable human being. So I've got to find somewhere in between being, just completely dissatisfied in that day on stage that I can sit in comfortably and live. And when we look at kind of like people's like ideal things, I love to ask them, especially when it comes to health and weight loss. They have an idea, and my questions are, what does success look like to you? If you get to the end of whatever it is that we're going to do and you're successful, what does that look like? What are you wearing? What do you smell? Where are you? What's in front of you? What do your clothes feel like? Like, we try to get really, really granular with it, because a lot of times people, one, they can't answer that question because they've never thought about the end result. Like, they know where they want to go, but they don't know where they want to go. Like, they know they want to do something, but they don't know what the end should look like. And a lot of people, when they start telling me what the end should look like, it's a place that they've never been before. Like, they've never been there. So we don't even have life experience to pull off of in that regard. So then we have to kind of back it up and say, okay, well, if you've never been there, you've never experienced this, and you don't know what it's going to be like, back me up to a point where you feel like you may have been close. Okay, let's shoot for that, because that is something that you've been at before, you've experienced before, you've lived through. We've got some life that we can go back to and reflect on. Otherwise, I think we just look often at what we see and we want it. Well, one, we don't know how to get it, but two, we've never been there. So it's sometimes it's kind of a directional kind of thing. I can get you to where you were 10 years ago because you've been there. I can't get you to some place that you've always wanted to go, but you've never been able to get there because you've never been there. I don't even know if it's possible. I don't want to tell you that it isn't, but I can't promise that it would be. But if getting you there is going to cost you your emotional well-being, your mental health, your sometimes your physical health, if getting you there is going to cost you anything holistically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, I'm not your person, because I'm not going to push you to a place that is going to be damaging to you in the long run. That's one of the reasons why I got out of the physique space, because I saw so many people wanting to push their bodies to places that were just not a healthy place to push them to, and then suffering for years, sometimes decades afterwards. Not just physically suffering, but like the emotional depression that comes after competing for a lot of athletes it's a real thing. Like, they've worked so hard to get to this point and now they've accomplished it. And then they have this huge letdown and they fall into this state of depression for days and days and days sometimes. I don't want to push anybody to that point, and not have a plan for the other side of it so that they aren't living in that space
So if
forever.
our listeners that identify with that, that's them. You're someone that absolutely can come alongside them and help them. Yes, or
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would think that that's a huge amount of people. That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. The people that don't account for that are always the ones that are like, I just don't know what to do with my life now, because they didn't consider the fact that once they have achieved this certain level of success, that you either have to push and go for more, or you have to learn to live in the space that you're in now.
Um, I'm just culture shocked because two things. One, you're breaking my story down so eloquently, and two, I need to become a better listener. 'Cause we have such a close relationship, and it's like it's right in front of me, kind of thing.
Mm,
What a powerful sentiment. I could say, I even think years could go by in being in a physical withdrawal from what you're breaking down
mm,
without even recognizing. Years could go by.
mm-hmm.
I am curious. Did you, when you were a little girl, did you think about bringing babies into the world? Because I learned from you that a doula is someone
Mm.
that helps people have, is it natural births? Is that what that is? Or is it another definition?
It's
Or
well,
birth?
just birth in general. And to your answer, no, that actually did not even cross my mind until 2020, when so many rules in medical situations changed, and we have three daughters, and I was like, well, they've all voiced the desire for me to support them during their births. Um, I couldn't do that if I was simply mom, but if I'm a birth worker, then that's allowed in the medical setting, even through all the craziness that we went through in the 2020 and the few years that followed. So, Chris and I were talking. It's been about a year and a half, maybe a little longer than that now. And I mean, I had gone through the certification and did all the things because I was like, I've brought three of my own into the world. I have women who are pregnant come and see me often. I could certainly do this. I love to learn, so that was just one more thing to kind of learn. Um, but then Chris and I were talking about it, and I was like, I feel kind of selfish because there are women out there right now who don't have supportive families or partners, and they're basically kind of in it on their own, like by themselves. And what a terrible thing to be alone in when you're like, that's one of the biggest life shifts many people experience. And why would I not want to serve women in the capacity of helping them to have that as a really good core memory versus one of the worst experiences they've ever been through? And
Wow.
sometimes it's simply just being present and not even really talking. It's just being in the space with them, giving them the freedom and permission to not censor themselves and to really state how they're feeling in the moment and share their needs and be transparent and raw and just carry that with them so they're not stuck in a place where they're feeling alone or abandoned or um,
Mm.
insignificant. Because I think a lot of the women that I have served up to this point would say that they really felt like they weren't seen and they weren't very significant when, um, just in general, not just in the birth space, but helping them to learn how to speak for themselves, to advocate for themselves, to be confident and courageous in that space, and to walk with them and hold their hand and explain to them what's going on, through the process. And then after baby's born, being there as the person that they can call and say, is this normal? Should I be feeling this way? Should that diaper look that way, or whatever the question is? But just being someone that they know they can count on, because a lot of them have never had that security of someone that they could count on. But just showing up well in that space and not asking for anything in return in a lot of cases.
Are there, what would you say that that work has, if at all, taught you that has translated to the other
Mm-hmm.
contexts that you help your
Yeah,
clients, your patients?
that's a great question. It was one I was actually asked on a podcast not long ago. And you know me, you know how I speak and how I interact with people. I'm incredibly direct, sometimes, maybe even too much so. And I think that being in the space with these women, helping them to birth and that sort of thing has made me a little softer. Not a pushover, so nobody try that, but softer in that, sometimes I need to consider my words and the weight of my words far longer, than I sometimes do, because these particular these particular women have been in situations where words have been used as weapons. And I have to be really, really mindful of how I speak and the voice that I use, and not be as commanding or as challenging as I would be in other situations. So it's really grown me in a space where I can then translate that over to my regular clients sometimes. And not that I feel like I did a poor job of it previously, but really be mindful and sit in things maybe a little longer
Hmm.
before offering a suggestion or giving an answer or, challenging them to do something differently.
Now, the well is an opportunity to serve two cultures. One that might be more accessible
Mhm.
to wherever our listeners are in their lives, their business, their careers, and others that these types of uh, uh, health opportunities are inaccessible. You said insurance, can be an
Mm.
obstacle. So the well is something that caters to both parties. If our listeners want to get in touch with the well, right? They want to re, how can they get in touch with you first? Like, what's the
Yeah.
fastest, most
So
direct way?
the easiest way to get in touch with me would be probably through social media. You can do it one of two ways. I would recommend probably going to the Wells IG page would probably be the easiest. It's at the Well NC. Um, that would probably be easiest. The wellnc also.com is our website. It's transitioning. So you may go to it one day and it looked completely different than it did the day before. That's okay because we're trying to make it better. Um, you can always call the office or text the office. There are tons of ways to get in touch with me. And because we are a nonprofit organization, when you talk to someone at the well, you're 9 times out of 10 talking to me. So I take that very seriously. I don't push off responsibilities because I don't know how. I don't want a chat bot to treat you a certain kind of way if that would not be how I would treat you if I were talking to you personally. So if you get response or you want to be in touch, you'll more than likely be talking with me.
Love it. And if our listeners would like to donate, they want to,
Mm.
is there a way that they can do that
Yeah.
through the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll make sure that you guys have the link, but we use a platform called Zephy to do our fundraising. If you would be interested in partnering with us to help provide the community services that we provide, which would be the doula services to those referrals coming in from different organizations in our community. And we also provide what we call mental health first response, which if you've tried to get care for yourself or for a family member in the last few years, you know how hard it is to get someone quickly. So, the mental health first response is a service we provide if you or your family are in crisis and need immediate help, whether that is someone to speak with you, to assess what your next step would be, to refer you quickly out to one of our community partners, or if the need is that we need to meet with you at the emergency room if you're in that sort of crisis for mental health needs, we can provide that for you, which is it helps families navigate things that they've probably never had to even think about before. And because we are a resource inside of our community, we can spend that time with you elbow to elbow, walk you through it, be a source of information for you and a resource to help get you the other things that you or your family member might need. So those are the two big things that we do in our community to really foster health and transformation in a positive way. But yeah, if you would love to partner to help with those initiatives continuing forward, we would love to do it. And I will definitely get you the information.
And our listeners can reach out to you if they want to potentially bring you into their team virtually,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
as an advisor, as a mentor in these capacities.
Sure, absolutely. The corporate work that we provide is it's tailored more toward the organization than it is like this is how we just do the thing. So if your organization really needs help around culture, like what you do, and needs
Yep.
to really have good people in place, and you're really protective of those people and how they're showing up, and really wanting to serve them in that capacity, then we can serve there. If you're looking at just providing additional health resources, we can also serve in that capacity. Or if you want a hybrid, we can definitely talk about how to make it work in whatever size organization that you have.
We'll have to have you back just to talk about the people and performance and culture. I love to do another episode on that. That's amazing. If people are listening, I would challenge them, get in touch with Dr. Suzanne Vester. Please participate in the well if that's weighing on your heart, and follow, well, subscribe to Faith, Family, and Fulfillment podcast and pick up the book and go check out Dr. Suze.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the Culture Matters podcast. It's been
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
uplifting.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Please share this with a friend, and we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.